Listen closely, because what I am about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about spiritual warfare. Right now, at this very moment, there is an invisible battle happening around you. Most people cannot see it, most people do not even know it exists, but I am about to pull back the veil and show you exactly what is attacking your peace, your prosperity, and your destiny. This is not a message you stumbled upon by accident. You were led here. There is a reason you are reading these words right now, instead of scrolling past like you usually do. Something in your spirit recognized the urgency, something deep inside you knew you needed to stop and pay attention. That instinct was correct. What you are about to learn in the next 20 minutes will equip you with spiritual weapons that most believers never discover in their entire lifetime. I need you to understand something fundamental before we go any further. The enemy does not attack randomly. He does not waste his resources on people who pose no threat to his kingdom. If you have been experiencing unusual resistance lately, if doors that should open remain closed, if blessings that should flow seem blocked, it is not because God has forgotten you, it is because the enemy sees something in your future that terrifies him. He sees the version of you that is about to emerge, and he is doing everything in his power to prevent that transformation. Right now there are 3 specific spiritual traps that have been set in your path. These are not general attacks that affect everyone. These are customized, targeted assaults designed specifically for people who are on the verge of breakthrough. The enemy studied your patterns, he observed your habits, he identified your weaknesses, and he crafted these traps with precision, knowing exactly when and how to deploy them for maximum damage. The first trap is the trap of distraction. It appears harmless on the surface. It comes disguised as legitimate opportunities, urgent responsibilities, or even good things that need your attention. But here is what most people miss. Distraction is not about filling your time with bad things. It is about filling your time with so many things that you have no space left for the one thing that matters most. Your communion with me. Your time in my presence, your moments of stillness where I can speak direction into your life. Think about your last 7 days. How many hours did you spend scrolling through content that added nothing to your spirit? How many hours were consumed by conversations that drained your energy rather than building your faith? How many hours were given to worries and anxieties that I specifically told you to cast upon me? The enemy does not need to make you do something evil to defeat you. He only needs to keep you busy with things that are not part of my plan. That busyness becomes a barrier between you and the breakthrough I have prepared. The second trap is more subtle and far more dangerous. It is the trap of false agreement. This happens when you unconsciously align your thoughts, your words, and your expectations with the enemy's narrative instead of my promises. Let me give you an example. When you say things like "I always struggle with this," or "nothing ever works out for me," or "I am just not that kind of person," you are not simply describing your reality. You are creating it. You are speaking agreement with limitations that I never placed on you. The enemy whispers lies into your mind, and if you repeat those lies often enough, they become the lens through which you see everything. You start interpreting every setback as confirmation of your inadequacy instead of seeing it as the resistance that always precedes promotion. You start viewing every closed door as rejection instead of recognizing it as my protection steering you away from paths that would have harmed you. False agreement turns you into an accomplice in your own defeat, but here is where it gets even more critical. False agreement does not just affect your thoughts, it affects your prayers. When you pray from a place of doubt instead of faith, when you ask me for things while simultaneously believing you do not deserve them or will not receive them, you create what I call a conflicted petition. You are asking with your mouth while denying with your heart. That internal contradiction blocks the flow of my power into your situation. The third trap is the most devastating because it operates in the realm of timing. I call it premature surrender. This is when you give up right before the breakthrough manifests. You have been praying, believing, standing in faith, doing everything right, but then the pressure intensifies, the wait grows longer, the circumstances look worse instead of better. And in that moment of maximum pressure you make the decision to quit. You tell yourself it was not meant to be. You convince yourself you misheard my voice. You walk away from the very thing I was about to release into your hands. The enemy knows something you often forget. The darkest hour is just before dawn. The greatest pressure comes right before the breakthrough. So he intensifies the attack precisely when you are closest to victory, hoping you will interpret the intensity as a sign that you should retreat. But that intensity is not a stop sign. It is a confirmation that you are in the right place, doing the right thing, and the enemy is panicking because he knows what is about to happen. Now I want you to pause for a moment and consider which of these three traps you are currently caught in. Is it distraction pulling your focus away from what truly matters? Is it false agreement where your words are creating limitations instead of possibilities? Or is it premature surrender where you are considering giving up right before your miracle manifests? If you recognize yourself in any of these descriptions, leave a comment below and let me know. Your acknowledgement is the first step toward freedom. Here is what you need to understand about spiritual warfare. The enemy can only work with what you give him. He has no creative power of his own. He cannot speak anything into existence. He cannot manufacture circumstances out of nothing. All he can do is take what already exists in your life, your fears, your doubts, your past failures, your insecurities, and amplify them. He turns up the volume on your negative thoughts. He magnifies your problems until they look insurmountable. He replays your past mistakes on an endless loop until you start believing that your history defines your destiny. But I am about to give you 3 spiritual weapons that will dismantle every one of these traps. These are not complicated religious rituals. These are simple, powerful practices that shift the spiritual atmosphere around you immediately. The first weapon is the weapon of deliberate declaration. This is where you take control of the narrative by speaking my word over your situation before the situation has a chance to speak to you. Every morning before you check your phone, before you engage with the world, before you allow external voices to set the tone for your day, you open your mouth and you declare truth. You say I am blessed and highly favored. You say no weapon formed against me shall prosper. You say the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. You say I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You are not trying to convince me of anything. I already know who you are. You are reprogramming your own mind to align with my reality instead of the enemy's lies. When you make deliberate declarations, you are doing something profoundly powerful in the spiritual realm. You are setting boundaries. You are establishing jurisdiction. You are announcing to every force of darkness that this territory belongs to me, and they have no authority here. The enemy cannot operate where my word is being spoken with faith and conviction. Your declarations create an atmosphere where my presence can manifest and my power can flow. The second weapon is the weapon of strategic silence. Now this might seem contradictory after I just told you about declarations, but hear me clearly, there is a time to speak, and there is a time to be silent. Strategic silence is when you refuse to defend yourself, explain yourself, or justify yourself to people who have already made up their minds about you. It is when you stop trying to convince doubters and critics and instead redirect that energy toward deepening your relationship with me. Strategic silence is a declaration of trust. It says I do not need to defend myself because God is my defender. It says I do not need to prove my worth because God has already validated me. It says I do not need everyone to understand me because the only opinion that matters is God's opinion. When you master strategic silence, you become untouchable. The enemy can launch accusations, spread rumors, and stir up opposition, but none of it affects you because you are anchored in my truth rather than people's perceptions. The third weapon is what I call prophetic positioning. This is where you physically and spiritually place yourself in environments, relationships, and activities that align with where I am taking you rather than where you have been. Most people stay stuck because they keep returning to the same places, the same people, the same habits that are connected to their old identity. But I am doing a new thing. I am creating a new version of you, and that new version cannot fully emerge if you keep feeding the old one. Prophetic positioning means you start making choices based on your future rather than your past. You start asking questions like, does this relationship support the person I am becoming or the person I used to be? Does this activity move me closer to my destiny or does it keep me comfortable in my current state? Does this environment inspire faith or does it reinforce fear? When you position yourself prophetically, you create momentum. You start attracting the people, opportunities, and resources that belong to your next season instead of recycling what belonged to your last season. Now let me show you how these three weapons work together. Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning and before you do anything else, you speak deliberate declarations over your day. You establish the spiritual atmosphere. You set the tone. Then throughout the day when critics, doubters, or negative voices try to pull you into unnecessary battles, you exercise strategic silence. You refuse to waste your energy defending yourself. You stay focused on my voice. And finally, you make decisions about where you go, who you spend time with, and what you invest your energy in based on prophetic positioning. You choose what aligns with your future, not what feels familiar from your past. When you operate with all three weapons activated, something remarkable happens. The traps that were set for you become powerless. Distraction cannot hook you because your declarations keep you anchored in purpose. False agreement cannot take root because your silence protects your peace and prevents negative narratives from gaining traction. And premature surrender becomes impossible because your prophetic positioning keeps you moving forward even when circumstances suggest you should retreat. But I need to warn you about something. The moment you start implementing these weapons, the enemy will escalate his attacks. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are doing something right. He will try to make you doubt the effectiveness of these practices. He will send people into your life who mock your declarations, question your silence, and criticize your choices. He will create circumstances that seem to contradict everything I am teaching you right now. This is the test. This is where most people abandon the very weapons that would have set them free. They try declarations for a few days, and when they do not see immediate results, they conclude it does not work. They attempt strategic silence for a week, and when people misinterpret their silence as weakness, they go back to defending and explaining. They start prophetic positioning, but when it feels uncomfortable or lonely, they retreat to familiar environments even though those environments keep them trapped. You must understand that spiritual warfare is not a one-time battle. It is a lifestyle. It is a daily commitment to operate in truth regardless of what circumstances look like. It is a decision to trust my process even when my process does not make sense to your natural mind. It is a willingness to look foolish in the eyes of people who do not understand spiritual principles because you know that my wisdom often appears as foolishness to those who are perishing. Let me take you deeper into something that most believers never discover. There is a fourth dimension to spiritual warfare that operates beyond the 3 traps and 3 weapons I have already revealed. This fourth dimension is the realm of spiritual inheritance. You were not born into this world as a blank slate. You carry within you both blessings and battles that were passed down through your family line. Some of you are fighting struggles that did not originate with you. You are dealing with patterns of poverty, addiction, broken relationships, or chronic illness that have plagued your family for generations. Here is what you need to know. These generational patterns are not your destiny, they are your inheritance from a fallen bloodline, but I have given you a new bloodline. When you were born again, you were grafted into my family. You became a joint heir with Christ. That means you have legal authority in the spiritual realm to break every curse, cancel every negative pattern, and reverse every evil inheritance that was passed down to you. But this authority is only activated when you exercise it intentionally. Most believers live under the weight of generational curses simply because they never took authority over them. They accept poverty as normal because their parents were poor. They accept dysfunction in relationships because everyone in their family struggles with the same issues. They accept limitations because those limitations have always been there, but I am telling you right now that acceptance is agreement. When you accept something as unchangeable, you give it permission to remain in your life. Breaking generational curses requires a specific kind of prayer. It is not a casual request, it is a legal declaration. You stand in the authority I gave you and you say, I break every generational curse of poverty that has operated in my family line. I cancel every pattern of addiction that has been passed down through my ancestors. I reverse every cycle of broken relationships, every spirit of fear, every limitation that was inherited rather than chosen. I declare that those patterns end with me. They will not be passed to my children or my children's children because I am establishing a new legacy starting today. When you pray this kind of prayer, you are not asking me to do something I might do if I feel like it. You are enforcing a legal victory that was already won at the cross. Jesus did not just die for your personal sins, He died to break every curse that was ever spoken over humanity. He became a curse so that you could become a blessing. That transaction is complete. The price is paid. The victory is won. Your job is not to beg me to set you free. Your job is to walk in the freedom that already belongs to you. Now, if you have been following along carefully, you realize that I have given you 4 layers of spiritual warfare, the 3 traps to avoid, the 3 weapons to deploy, and the 4th dimension of breaking generational curses, but there is still one more piece that completes the picture. This final piece is what I call prophetic acceleration. This is when I compress time and release in months what would normally take years. This is when doors open that no man can shut. This is when resources appear from unexpected sources. This is when relationships align perfectly. This is when everything that was delayed suddenly manifests all at once. Prophetic acceleration does not happen randomly. It happens when you have done the work I just outlined. It happens when you close the doors the enemy was using to access your life. It happens when you start operating in spiritual authority rather than spiritual passivity. It happens when you stop agreeing with limitations and start declaring possibilities. It happens when you break free from generational patterns and establish a new legacy. When all of these elements come together, you create what I call a convergence moment. This is when heaven and earth align. This is when my timing and your readiness intersect. This is when acceleration begins. There is something I need you to hear clearly. The enemy wants you to believe that you are alone in this battle. He wants you to think that everyone else has it figured out and you are the only one struggling. He wants you to feel isolated, overwhelmed, and defeated. But that is a lie. You are not alone. You are part of a remnant of believers who are waking up to their spiritual authority. You are part of a generation that refuses to accept limitations that previous generations accepted. You are part of a movement of people who are breaking generational curses, walking in prophetic acceleration and demonstrating what it looks like when heaven invades earth. And here is what happens when you connect with other believers who are operating at this level: your faith multiplies, your breakthroughs accelerate, your impact expands. Because spiritual warfare is not just an individual battle, it is a corporate battle. When you link arms with others who understand these principles, you create a synergy that is exponentially more powerful than anything you could accomplish alone. This is why I am telling you to share this message. Not because I need more views or comments, but because there are people in your circle who need to hear this right now. There are people in your life who are on the verge of giving up, and this message could be the lifeline that pulls them back from the edge. So let me ask you directly: who comes to mind as I am speaking these words? Who do you know that needs to hear this message today? Do not ignore that prompting. That is my spirit giving you a prophetic assignment. Send this to them right now, tag them in the comments, share this with your family, your friends, your church community. Because when you become a conduit of my truth, when you help deliver someone else from the traps the enemy set for them, you are not just blessing them, you are positioning yourself for greater blessing, because I reward those who partner with me in setting captives free. Now I want to address something that might be stirring in your heart right now. Some of you are thinking this sounds too good to be true. You have been disappointed before. You have believed promises that did not manifest. You have stood in faith and watched your faith seemingly produce nothing. So there is a part of you that wants to believe what I am saying, but another part of you is afraid to hope again, because hope deferred makes the heart sick. I understand that. I see the wounds that disappointment has left on your soul, but I need you to understand something crucial. Past disappointments were not failures, they were preparation. Every time you stood in faith and did not see the result you expected, you were building spiritual muscle. Every time you declared truth in the face of contradicting circumstances, you were developing authority. Every time you refused to quit even though quitting would have been easier, you were proving to the enemy that you are not someone he can defeat with pressure. Those experiences were not wasted. They were training, and now you are about to step into a season where all that training pays off. You are about to see why you had to go through what you went through. You are about to understand why certain doors had to close so that the right doors could open. You are about to witness how I was working everything together for your good even when it looked like everything was falling apart. This is the moment where faith transitions from theory to reality. This is where you stop just believing that I can do something and you start experiencing me actually doing it. This is where your testimony shifts from "I hope God will come through" to "let me tell you what God did." And when that shift happens, when you move from hoping to knowing, you become dangerous to the enemy's kingdom, because you are no longer operating in wishful thinking. You are operating in demonstrated power. Let me give you a practical framework for the next 40 days. I want you to commit to 40 days of intentional spiritual warfare using everything I have taught you. 40 is a significant number in Scripture. It represents a period of testing, transformation, and breakthrough. Moses was on the mountain for 40 days. Jesus fasted for 40 days. the Israelites wandered for 40 years. 40 represents a complete cycle where something old ends and something new begins. For the next 40 days, I want you to start every morning with deliberate declarations. Speak my word over your life for at least 10 minutes before you engage with anything else. Then throughout the day, practice strategic silence. Do not defend yourself to critics. Do not explain yourself to doubters. Keep your peace guarded. In the evening, examine your choices through the lens of prophetic positioning. Ask yourself, did I make decisions today based on where I am going or where I have been? And at least once a week, pray specifically to break generational curses and establish a new legacy. If you do this consistently for 40 days, I promise you will not be the same person at the end of this period that you are at the beginning. Something will shift, something will break, something will open. You might not see it all happen on day 40, but you will see enough evidence to know that something significant has changed in the spiritual realm, and that evidence will fuel your faith to keep going, to keep fighting, to keep believing until everything I promised you fully manifests in the natural realm. I believe you will. I believe you are part of the remnant that refuses to quit. I believe you are one of the ones who will demonstrate to this generation what it looks like when someone fully surrenders to my will and fully activates their spiritual authority, and I cannot wait to hear your testimony of breakthrough. I cannot wait to see how your life transforms over these next 40 days and beyond. So go now, take what you have learned, apply it with diligence, fight with confidence, and watch as I move heaven and earth to bring my promises to pass in your life. Your breakthrough is closer than you think. Do not give up now.